Despite what many people seem to think, getting tenure is really hard and really stressful. And the process of applying for tenure is literally applying for your job all over again. If you don't get tenure, then you are fired and you have to start fresh at a different university if you can even find one that will hire you. Or you have to start a new career from scratch when you're nearly 40. I'm going through this process now in Florida. You might have heard of our governor, Ron Desantis, who is perhaps not very keen on the Florida State University system, or SUS.
DeSantis' hostile takeover of Florida's new college began back in January.
It's going to end this accreditation monopoly.
As I'm applying for tenure, and after working for 15 years to get here from the start of my PhD.
Nothing really a whole lot new going on today. Writing up exam questions for my Calc 1 students.
He is effectively taking it away. Let's talk about what tenure means and how it's being changed at a big and well-regarded university in Florida.
So I've been wanting to make this video for about a year now. I want to tell people what it's like to go up for tenure, ask for external letter writers. I can take you through the process as I go through it, and I thought that'd be really great. What I didn't anticipate was how political this will end up being. So I don't want to put politics on my channel. I don't like it. I'm not trying to make any sort of political statement about any of this. But you can't talk about getting tenure at a Florida university without mentioning Ron DeSantis and his politics right now, because that is huge and it affects me and all of my colleagues as well. So don't take this as a political video, and a lawyer told me also that I should probably say that I'm speaking on my behalf as an independent citizen and not on the behalf of the university, at the University of South Florida. I mean, just the thought that I need to put that into my video to avoid, so I can say I'm invoking my First Amendment rights, just seems so intense. I know, this is a math channel, it's a channel about academics and how you can go from getting a bachelor's degree in mathematics and all the way up to getting a tenured professor position, assuming I get it and I can tell you how. But yeah, it's not meant to be a channel about politics. All right, so with all that said, let's go ahead and talk about what tenure actually is.
A tenure position, usually coming with the title associate professor at an R1 and AA university, is the dream of many graduate students in STEM. Getting the initial position, a tenure track assistant professor, is incredibly hard. It took 6 years of constantly sending out applications during my postdoc years before I finally got interviewed and offered a position.
So, it's been a while since I posted, and a lot's been going on. I am a professor at a Research 1 university. This just started up this week. I'm finishing up my first week now.
Securing a position like this requires many high-quality publications and a ton of networking, because the research never actually speaks for itself. But once you actually get this position is when the hard work actually starts. You have to publish in competitive venues, you have to bring in a lot of money, you have to mentor graduate students and graduate PhD students, you have to review manuscripts, serve as an editor, you have to organize special sessions at conferences, and become well-renowned for what you do. You also have to teach undergrad and graduate courses, and you have to make all your students happy enough that they give you positive reviews, at least 4 out of 5 scores. Then, if you have done enough service at your university, you have a shot at getting tenure. From the start of my PhD journey in graduate school to here has been 15 years, and it's been almost 10 years since I got my PhD. I spent many of those years at the poverty line, and my postdoc years started me at a very low salary. I also faced unemployment more than once, and all of that stress put me in hospital with panic attacks and tachycardias at one point. So what is this thing that people work so hard to get? This tenure. Is it even worth it after all of that? I mean, is it? That's probably a question I should ask myself at this point, right? That's a lot of talk about this thing called tenure. But what is it exactly? As an academic, I like to teach and do research. After graduating with an undergrad degree in mathematics, I was inspired by my professors and coursework to pursue a PhD. For me, that PhD was in functional analysis and what many would call pure mathematics. Okay, Google, why don't you tell us, what is tenure? All right, so according to Google, tenure is 1, the conditions on which land or buildings are held or occupied. I don't think that applies to me. This one, the verb form of tenure, seems to be the one that applies the most. Give someone a permanent post, especially as a teacher or professor. Tenure is essentially lifetime job security at a university. It guarantees distinguished professors academic freedom and the freedom of speech by protecting them from being fired no matter how controversial or non-traditional their research, publications, or ideas are. After you get your PhD, you have a few options. If you want to continue to do research, you could go work for a research arm of a company such as Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. I know somebody who went on to work at HelloFresh. You can go work for a national laboratory such as Los Alamos, Sandia, or Oak Ridge, but then each company and lab has a particular focus. Some of them just want to make some money, and others want to work on a very particular aspect of something in government infrastructure. Those national labs are each under the Department of Energy, and the companies want you to solve problems that they are currently having and can lead to them making more money. If you want to pursue research that isn't immediately commercializable or necessarily applicable, then you need to find a place to do that. That place is academia, where the bulk of your pay comes from teaching courses and mentoring the next generation of graduate students. After a professor has successfully gone through a probationary period or the assistant professor period, they achieve tenure. Tenure allows the professor to conduct research on problems with very long time horizons, as well as high-risk research where something might just fail altogether. This is why we can have some professors work on really hard problems, like the Riemann hypothesis, or even a proof of Fermat's last theorem, which came from Andrew Wiles, who literally put down research for years to focus on this one topic inside of number theory. Without tenure, he would have lost his job doing that. And there's a ton of technologies that were niche 20 or 30 years ago and just lived inside of academia. There's things like support vector classifiers out of the 1980s. They spent a long time incubating inside of academia before they were really commercializable. Without tenure, no reasonable mathematician will work on problems like that because they have to continue to make new research products or they lose their job. Another aspect of tenure is that it acts as an incentive for very skilled individuals to take a considerable pay cut by staying in academia. I have colleagues in mathematics and computer science that have had offers from tech companies that can more than double their salary. Some of them decided to remain in academia because they enjoy the benefits of tenure. I mean, they also negotiated retention offers, but it still didn't match the offer of the other company, not by a long shot. That is what tenure is for. But applying for it is like applying for your own job all over again. Applying for tenure requires a teaching narrative, a research narrative, a CV, and 3 to 4 external letter writers vouching for your research program. This is pretty much exactly the materials you need to apply for the job in the first place, except the external letters are from people you have never worked with. In fact, I had to send the list of letter writers to my chair, who then forwarded them to my dean. The letter writers cannot have ever worked with me in the past, and I'm not allowed to have spoken with them about the letter at all. These can be colleagues that I have met at conferences or while giving invited talks, but nobody I've ever written a paper with, a proposal with, nobody I've organized a workshop with together, nothing like that. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing that activates your imposter syndrome like asking for somebody at a high-powered university to look at your CV and decide whether or not you belong in the club. I mean, that is like pro-level imposter syndrome right there. Now, the college is very careful about who goes on a list. I initially tried to include someone that I thought would know my research very well, but I helped him with some typos and corrections in his textbook, and then he included my name in his acknowledgments, which then led the dean to tell me that I couldn't have him on the list. So I found several people that were familiar with my work who might also be able to vouch for me, and honestly, some of them, I only hoped that they remembered who I was. It's really gut-wrenching to put your life's work in the hands of some people that you barely know. Once the list was approved, my chair started sending out the requests for letters all over the last summer. He tells me he got enough people writing back, so that's good. Now, let's talk about the attack on tenure by some of these state governments, and let's figure out if we really do need to get rid of tenure.
While I was putting this video together, I've been looking into the history of tenure and what it means. And so it says, and this is from The Role of Tenure in Higher Education. It was written by John Savage in 1998. And it says that tenure was introduced in American colleges and universities early in this century in response to decades of public discussion of the arbitrary dismissal of faculty members for holding unpopular views. And one of the most celebrated cases leading to tenure involved President Andrews of Brown University. Late in the 19th century, he advocated for the free coinage of silver as a means to stop deflation in the American economy, which basically means that money is gaining more and more value. But that basically means that your economy is sort of shrinking. This angered members of the Brown Corporation, many of whom were creditors benefiting from deflation by being repaid with increasingly valuable money. They told President Andrews that he must cease his public support for the issue. This led to a national debate through letters to the editor. And one of these letters, Francis Whalen, Brown Corporation member and dean of the Yale Law School, said that President Andrews' position threatened donations to Brown and that money was the lifeblood of universities. And so it sort of gives you an idea of what Americans thought of universities at the time. In a widely discussed response, Professor Josiah Royce of Harvard's Distinguished Philosophy Department said that freedom, not money, is the lifeblood of universities. And so generally that is what we think of it today. So you have the freedom to focus on things that are maybe controversial or might take a lot of time. If we see tenure being removed from, say, the Florida university system, then any sane professor will never undertake any sort of large effort. And because these large efforts, which could lead to really remarkable results, just aren't worth it because they don't want to lose their jobs. We all have to feed ourselves. And so that's where tenure, as we think of it today, came from.
Now, DeSantis' attempts to remove tenure are nothing new, but it has gone further than previous attempts in the past. In 1995, Stephen J. Ulfelder led the charge to eliminate the tenure system in Florida. Ulfelder claimed that tenure failed our students because it emphasized research over teaching. They said that it is impossible to fire ineffective teachers. They claimed that it was also applied unequally, so it favored men more than it favored women. And they were also concerned with how much it costs to fire somebody who had tenure already. Now, Ulfelder and his associates claimed that tenure was an archaic practice that protected professors that have lost their productivity or whose specialization is no longer current. They basically wanted the university system to become more profitable corporate engines by basically removing the chaff. Like if you are no longer doing current or contemporary research, then they say you need to be gotten rid of. But the thing is, if I wanted to work in a corporation, why would I take a job with half the salary? I mean, it's not like I can't go somewhere else with my skill set. At the time, they attempted to institute this whole post-tenure review process, which ultimately was blocked by the union, the United Faculty of Florida, through what is called the bargaining agreement. Now, more than 25 years later, DeSantis has successfully implemented a post-tenure review, and departments throughout the University of Florida have been drafting PTR criteria this year, post-tenure review. Essentially, once every 5 years, a professor must undergo this review where they submit essentially the same documents I'm submitting to apply for tenure, minus the external letters. And as it stands now, the PTR completely circumvents the faculty within the department. It goes straight to the chair, dean, and provost. This eliminates much of the quality control found in the annual evaluations. It's important to remember that Florida has one of the strongest university systems in the country. It boasts like 5 R1 institutions, and 2 of which are actually AAU members. There are only 70 or so AAU universities, and even Dartmouth, an Ivy League institution, wasn't invited to join the AAU until 2019. The University of Florida and the University of South Florida, where I am, are both Florida institutions in the AAU. And I honestly feel that the whole PTR criteria is going to chase away many great professors who would otherwise join us. I know several professors who have left Florida institutions for institutions in other states because they didn't want to deal with all the politics here. And I mean, the politics surrounding our universities is making it harder to hire competitive faculty. And many good faculty members have also been leaving for other institutions in other states. This is really problematic and not a little bit worrisome as someone who is applying for tenure for a permanent job within this system. I mean, is this somewhere where I really want to stay? Well, this is the job I picked, and right now, this is where I am. I'll keep you guys updated on this whole process. The first deadline was in August, and the department review is due right about now. Then it has to go through the college, and then to the provost, I think. Anyway, please wish me luck. Who knows? Maybe if I don't get tenure, hopefully my YouTube channel will be big enough to support me. Yeah, no. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.